Okay, I know I've been getting a lot of slack for not doing the Fall of HQ induction. I've just am completely out of my depth. There's no saying about that. So, what I'm going to do right now is bring in Jessica Brand and we will discuss the Fall of HQ. But first, I need to play an intro.
One thing was for sure. They both believed Sparks to be a total tool.
Be an exciting contest which shows that divorced couples can still have fun together, right?
Mythological hero H-list. C. On the spot dice spin.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
There's the intro for the last game show garbage induction. As we know, we're talking about the Fall of HQ, and joining me this time is a person who has played HQ almost since its inception. It's Jessica Brand, my co-commentator for the Gumbocast, who has been unwell the past couple of shows, but she's feeling a little better right now. So you got it when it came out for Android, right?
Yeah, I currently have an iPhone, but if you remember back in the day, it was one of the reasons I wanted an iPhone back in the day, but I didn't get one. It came out for Android in December of 2017, and I've been playing it basically ever since, and along with a bunch of other apps, and made about, I'd say, probably about $10,000 by doing so since that point,
Not bad.
realistically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a frequent player, I'm a frequent winner, and I'm one of the few people I think that would be qualified to be speaking about this. I know some people would be more qualified than me actually, but I mean I'm not a bad choice. Let's just say that.
Yep. And plus, you're already on our payroll, so to speak, so it helps out.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Convenience, baby.
Yeah.
That's what gets you through the day.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the we're probably just going to narrow this from what a lot of people kind of consider the Fall of HQ to have started. And we'll start with the death of Colin Kroll.
Yeah, I mean what was
seemed to be the one
found to be an
driving it.
overdose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was one of the two, of course, with Boris Yusupov, who still is involved with the company day-to-day operations. He directs the After Dark games that they've done a couple times in the past few weeks that are always an interesting attempt to see the hosts get drunk and enjoy themselves. But Kroll, I think,
to
was
give
more,
out 10
I
times
think,
multipliers for points.
The multipliers have valid use. They don't really as much this season, but there certainly was a benefit to them in prior seasons. I don't really see why you're going to do that when you're going to be lucky to get $1 over the broken format they have now, honestly. But I know people who have bought multipliers, and I frankly don't blame them for doing so, especially when the formats justify it. They don't right now, but in the past, and then in the very recent past, I think their best format was that they had 25 questions. And if you answered them all, or if you qualified by answering the last one correctly, then you got your share of $10,000. And usually that would be at most like 5 people. So you would get thousands a night potentially. And it was great. It made for great watching because even if you were out, you were seeing big numbers fly across. Chances are they weren't going to give it out, so the company would save money too. So it felt like a win-win situation all around. And of course, that's not really anymore the case, where the most you're going to win is $1,500 on most nights. It's not always the case, but in most nights, you're playing for under $1, which is really kind of sad. And, I mean, really, the app genre is just dying. We talk about the one I think that was really successful for a while was Mexican Confetti, by as a comparison of what could have happened to HQ. What could have happened to HQ if they really been a little bit more steady? They dropped their sponsor and they officially ended last night. So that was something I didn't expect to see, but it happened.
Wow.
HQ suffered from a lot of issues. It dealt with, I think you could say, some lack of really stability within its higher ranks about how people were perceived to be treated. And the fact I don't think for most people, granted not all because I'm still playing it, but for the casual player, if you win HQ once, I don't think a lot of people were in HQ for the money or are in it for the money. But I think a lot of them were in for the experience. Oh, I won $5-10 on HQ. Why do I need to play it again? Because they didn't really shake it up all that much.
No.
And introducing this jackpot format, which is the one I was mentioning with the 25 questions, was much more palatable. It was really a last-ditch effort, as is the new HQ Beats, the HQX formats that they had a soft release for earlier this week. These are last gasp efforts, but they're done too late. You consider that the show at its peak was 2.15 million, and you are lucky to get the 0.15 of that million right now, which, who knows how much of that is bots? That's the other thing. Bots brought them down considerably, because obviously you had a lot of humans, but you had swarms and armies of bots that were probably keeping the show afloat and mutually beneficial to anybody except honest good players, because the bots were allowed to cash out. They would wipe balances. I have lost $850 because they think I'm bot. Beep boop, I'm not. But because of that, it meant less money they had to give out. It meant it was less payout that they had to give players that had actually earned it. So there was certainly a benefit in that regard. And because if you catch a false positive, like I was, then you didn't have to pay that money out. And you wonder how much of that was their base even at their peak. It's impossible to know, and I don't think it's as much as a relative rate or percentage as it has been like the past few months. But it certainly was an issue for sure, because when they did a survey a few years ago, they asked something that we could improve, and most of us hardcore players had suggested that they should find harder security measures. Well, okay then. Getting people booted out of games because they did too well and simply were answering questions correctly is a very, very bad thing to have going on with your player base. It doesn't speak well to you as individuals. I mean, you have false positives. You have people losing literally thousands of dollars at least, and that's being conservative about it, because the company believes you are cheating. Because, that the way 2019 law works, your only choice really, unless you opted out prior to April 2018 when none of this was going on, was legal arbitration. So, and you couldn't obviously work on that for a class action lawsuit because you can't, because their own terms legally, and those are legally bound terms that actually are enforceable because, of course, terms of service, you really can't always be literal if you have an unenforceable rule or a law. I mean, that's just how these things work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating to me too, because the odd thing is with HQ, with the exception of the giant sponsors they had, like the NBA Finals a couple years ago, were 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 by Toon Blast, $1 million in this big sponsored game. You had the Rampage game for $300,000. You had Ready Player One for $250,000. I mean, it's just remarkable. But I think the best money for your time, if you were a legit player and you were a top player like I was actually as recently as a few months ago, hypothetically. Even though they were offering less on an average game about what they would give out, you could be assured that you would get the lion's share of that money because you knew what you were doing, and other players would bail out with less money. Like, the format goes, if you haven't played Jackpot and it warrants description, right? So you got 9 questions right. You have the option to take the money that's offered, or you can play on it. And usually the first offer is anywhere from like 5 cents to maybe $1 on a really good day. Then it was question 12, which would usually be, I don't know, maybe a few dollars. And then you got question 15, probably high single digits. 18 would probably be like, I don't know, like you could get yourself a little nice dinner at Olive Garden or chain restaurant. 21, you would start to talk about multi-course meals, and you go beyond that, you're talking about covering years of college for people for student debt and stuff. It was insane, and they wouldn't have to offer that much money because so many people took the little Big Mac meals that were like $6 offers. I mean, as someone who has declined $375 offers, paid $50 to rejoin into another game, that's not me. I am an ultimate risk taker when it comes to these kinds of games because the reward is so potentially high.
And it's what happened to me last night because on Thursday night they had this Friends day or Friends night where regular HQ was, and HQ Words was Friends based. And I got to Q9. I answered Q9. I just guessed. I knew Q10 because of the hint that they gave out in the they spoiler a later question in the notifications that you get for the game. I admit to bailing out at 6 cents. It's because it's Friends trivia and I don't watch Friends.
And that's something that you'll never see me do just by comparison. I would go all the way because this was unfortunately the very poor version of Jackpot. I just wish they would. This is what I think is the most recent fall. But this is, of course, me personally as a player. I think a lot of people would say the real fall was, just what it has come down from. Like you talk about when HQ Sports launched, when HQ Words launched, they had about 100,000, 200,000 players, and that is a good day for the trivia app now. Those games are lucky to get 50,000 because, to HQ's credit, they're saying they're cleaning out bots and so forth, but it's just really pathetic by comparison. And some of that is their own doing, some of it isn't. I think their format just wasn't stable from the get-go, and that's not their fault. But some of it, on the other hand, from not creating goodwill from players, they realize this too late, that you can market your good players to give an example to people. Like you talk about Jeff Friend, who won $100,000 on the season finale a few months ago, actually. Like they went out to Indianapolis to see him. Matt played pub trivia with him. You have Eugene Dion, who played and was a very respected host. And you have him guest host words, guest host trivia. Everyone loved seeing him. But too often, it felt like the inside versus the outside. And I feel like that applies from workers to the C-level and from the players to really the inside of the operations. Now, you shouldn't know every single little thing. Mm-hmm. But when there's that disconnect, it's not a good thing. Especially when people get booted wrongly. And I think that scared people off. Because if you're not going to have a legitimate chance at a prize when you're playing legitimate, the prizes really don't justify it sometimes. And the fact that sometimes you're dealing with factors that are beyond your control, like a bot count, which is going to dilute your prize. There's just not really much of an incentive. And if you're one of those people who say, "Ooh, I won. Why am I going to play now?" I mean, money is sometimes not the incentive. Sometimes people play for the game. Like, it's kind of like what people will describe about when they go on game shows, which I'm not judging for them for at all, but sometimes they'll say, "I just did it for the experience," which is a perfectly legitimate view, but it's kind of the issue that HQ encountered from an operational perspective, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And again, that's not really their fault. That's how people work.
Yeah. I want to also add something that there was some publicized stuff, and you can correct me on this, and please do. You had a marketable guy as your host, Scott Rognowski, I think is his name.
Yeah, Scott Rogowski, currently host of Inside Baseball on DAZN, the sports streaming service.
Mm-hmm. Like, he was very marketable. He was doing the rounds. And HQ didn't try to keep him.
Well, sort of. He said that he could only do the show on weekends because he was offered the position by DAZN. And Russ had none of it, and he said that, no, you can't. And I think it's an interesting proposition because Scott was, and I think is, to many people's memories, the primary host of HQ. And the thing is with that, if you want someone to be in a primary starring role and have them be on a limited basis like that, it's kind of complicated. I don't think there was a winning move to be had either way by Russ because I don't know. If you keep him, it looks kind of awkward because it looks like the game is diminished in really what it is. And of course, if you let Scott go, as what happened, you're going to get a fiery backlash because of what just happened in that. Because it looks like, your guy that you brought up, the guy that you made iconic with your game, gives you the intro and everything, is no longer there. Well, It's kind of an awkward dissonance in that respect too.
And now you have, like, a slew of hosts, and let's talk about them right now. Because I think a couple of them contribute to the fall. And one of them is Matt Richards, who is now the primary host of HQ. He doesn't. I don't think he does word. He doesn't do words because that's Anna Roisman. Doesn't do
And he's done words like I think once,
right.
but it's a rare occasion.
To me, in some cases, Matt claims to be like this improv guy, but he's just, in some cases, he's just deer in headlights.
Sometimes he gets a little bit redundant with what he does. Matt is a very, very funny guy if you go on his Twitter. I think he's kind of limited by the format, which is, I mean, I wish he would change it up a little bit about what he does. But it's hard to say how much, because the thing is with Matt's humor, and it's marketed as a family show, is that you really can't tell the kind of jokes that Matt Richards gives on his Twitter. And that was funny. And Matt was
Matt
good
on Wild and Out? Wasn't he on Wild and Out?
I think so. He actually had a role a little bit. I believe on Snoop's show out as well as actually one of the writers. A lot of people don't know that. He also auditioned to be the confetti host, which is a role he didn't get. He'll let you know about that one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he is someone who had, I think, similar issues about just repeating himself. Question 5. To staying alive, which was great and amazing. What's up, my H quizzes? Which, I mean, again, Matt's stuff when it came out was downright hilarious and mocking of the game in a way that everyone could really agree with. But when it's the same thing every time, Matt Richards is clever enough to do other stuff. He's very good like that. But it's the same stuff every time. You get tired of it. And I don't know how much of that is his limitations. I'm inclined to not believe it that much, if at all, or just how much the show will let him do, which wouldn't surprise me in the least. But I don't know. I can really speculate. I think part of the reason he's big is because, and I admit to this too, they sent out a survey from Intermedia, HQ's parent company, about who their favorite host was and everything, and I put Matt because Limited Doses Matt was outstanding. So I thought if you give this guy the full-time gig, hypothetically, then he's going to be able to expand upon what he does and make it all kinds of variants and all this kind of stuff.
And he did. He contracted himself.
Well, he did the same stuff. I don't think he necessarily contracted, because nothing really changed for better or worse.
Right. And then you have the other hosts. I like the host of Sports and Words. I forget the name of the Lauren Gambino. I think does
Lauren
sports.
Gambino, who does her fantasy football podcast around this time of year too. So if you like her work, you can find her that way. Yeah, she's very good. I think Roisman tries a little bit too hard to be the word nerd that she shows herself as again, it's someone who I think is funnier off the show than he really is. And of course, you have the backups. You have Shaza, Sharon Carpenter. You have Sharon Carpenter. You have a lot of mixed hosts who don't come in very often. You have Timothy Dunn, who's hello, my friends. We're playing words. Who kind of comes in like kind of a creepy Barney, if I'm honest. You also have I can't think of her name. Harnett. Cut this. I can't think of her name, but there's. Oh dang it! I cannot think of her name. So host and Scott, obviously,
but yeah, it's like they don't have that stable presence anymore, like what Scott had.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if I'd say that. I'd say if anything, Matt's presence is about as stable as Scott's. Oh yeah, Sarah Priebus, who is a very popular host in certain circles, who came back recently, has done a few games. They've had stability in recent hosts, honestly. They've had a few, like Tyler Fisher, who does his voices. He has a little bit of problem stumbling over his words at times, but I think he's decent in terms of his entertainment, for sure.
And let's continue on this jackpot format. I'm going back to the jackpot format because this is the era I'm playing in the era of the jackpot format.
Well,
And
sort of. You're playing post-jackpot. You're playing the poor man's jackpot version, which is, ugh. Change it back, HQ. You didn't even give away that much more last time you played jackpot compared to this format. And it was so much better. You can do it, guys. Even if you make the questions hard.
and to me, I think the format is, eh.
Well, to be fair, you're playing, as I say, I really, really dislike the format that's going on right now. But once you see it for like 10,000 and you start to see the possibilities spin for three-digit figure wins at minimum, like there was a couple weeks ago, that is exciting to see. Very exciting, especially if you're in the thick of it or if you have someone who you know who you're rooting for is in the jackpot format mix.
Like you.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see my icon. It's a little shamrock, one lucky fan. Yeah.
Hmm.
Good luck.
And another one that we're talking about, the jackpot and what they currently have right now. You know how much the finale is worth, the season 7 finale?
Yeah, that's the 10,000 good jackpot format, which is fine, honestly. That's the one they should do every day. I can live with that.
Hmm. Like, I wonder how hard it would be to get sponsors for even the daily shows. I mean,
I don't know if there's the interest. I mean, just look at just how much it is tapered off. It was over 500,000 to start the year, and that might be conservative. And now it's maybe 110,000 if you're lucky. It was lucky to break like 150,000 because Friends theme and their theme ones like Disney and Harry Potter and all these same darn themes that they do over and over again that actually do get them numbers. To be fair, they do work out,
hmm
but it's such a marked decrease. Like, I mean, they do have they have the DraftKings sponsorship with HG Sports that you can sponsor with, which is actually kind of nice as someone who does daily fantasy on the side. So, but for the daily trivia, I don't know if there's any market for it anymore. If I'm a sponsor, hypothetically, would I want to hitch my name to a dying product at this point with really no signs of regeneration? I mean, it might be the biggest trivia market, but I just wouldn't from that perspective.
it's like unless you have a already stable product that you could hitch it to, then it's just going to become lost. And, you know, I know in private you kind of rag on Swagbucks Live for its cheap, for it being cheap.
Well, it's kind of cheap. I don't have an issue with what they offer as a pot. I have an issue with what they've done with it. They used to have it where it would be pretty darn difficult, and you could expect to make, I don't know, maybe $30 a week from their games.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're lucky to make $5 a week, and that's if you play every single cheap game that they do. And when I say cheap, I should clarify this because I'm sure not everyone who watches this plays the games. So you're getting a share of $1,000 for everyone who plays, and typically those pays are under $1 now. I have played in plenty of games where I've won $50, $80, $100, and $333 from Swagbucks. Those days were the norm, and it was great. And the pot was still $1,000, or if it was not more than a few $100 over that. So they're going unnecessarily trying to market to the masses because, ooh, we want to get more people winning, which is, I think, odd from my perspective. I realize that Swagbucks has a lot of money because, of course, it's an existing product. But you consider they give one bonus SP, which is equal to a cent. To everyone who gets questions 2 to 10 right, Prodash is doing very well for itself. But I want to have games where, well, yeah, I might not necessarily win, but I have a chance to make some real bucks, which is why I happen to like a huge jackpot format, just because it kind of makes sense like that. It's why I loved Confetti, because, again, I might not always win, but gosh darn, it's going to give me a good chance to win some money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I made $5,000 playing Confetti alone, so... But they're just... But I don't think they're cheap. I think they're cheapening out how difficult their questions can be, and there's no reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike, well, sort of unlike HQ throughout the course of this year, Swag, if anything, has grown a little bit. Swag used to be 20,000 a game last year. HQ used to be millions last year. Swag throughout the year has been 12 to 14,000. HQ is literally decimated, and that might be underselling a little bit.
And I want to get a little bit on the technical side because we talked about. I know you kind of scoffed at how unstable the video is, like it would keep on buffering and stuff like that.
No.
I play Swagbucks at 5 and then HQ at 6. Pacific. Remember, I'm on the Pacific
Yeah,
coast.
say the Pacific time for you, so that means 8 and 9 Eastern on my time. So again, if you want to ask my codes, just put in the comments. I'll reply because we both got a life that way and so forth.
Yep.
The buffering stuff is an interesting case to me. I don't think it matters as much to most people, specifically the buffering. Although certainly they've had some weird issues where they asked a while ago to name the capital of the state that the artist who painted the given photo is from, the given portrait was from. I mean, which is fine. That's a fine question. It's a frustrating one, but I mean, art isn't that bad. But you have to know from Cheyenne, Albany, or Boston. Fine. But what about the fact that the painting itself didn't show up? That to me is an issue. And what's weird is when you talk about the fact that they have 10% of players that they once did, right? And they didn't used to have these issues when they had millions of people. I mean, it kind of would be nice to have that Jackson Pollock portrait show up.
Yeah.
But I think that they've cheaped out a little bit on the server side, certainly. And I think that's more an effect of that than it is necessarily instability of technology. I think that's just a case of you get what you pay for. Because when they had 2.5 million, yeah, you had some glitches. But I remember when they were at the peak of their powers, they could run 1 million plus people in and out, and it would be. And I would always wonder how they stayed perfect in that respect. That was always remarkable. Nowadays, you don't necessarily get that, but most often, obviously there are exceptions, like I mentioned, and there are some issues like of small puzzles and words the other day that impacted some people that are going to make the game genuinely unplayable. I mean, like, you got to see the painting to see a painting question.
Yep. And I'll say this, you don't get those issues with Swagbucks.
Yeah, Swagbucks. Well, the thing is with Swagbucks, though, you wonder. I think if you had HQs, if you put Swagbucks audience on HQ servers, I don't think you would have an issue because the only time I've seen them have an issue is notably usually at beginnings of games. There have been a few issues, obviously with the painting one because I was very late in the game to recognize the painting and then know where they're from. But usually it's early in games because obviously that's when you're going to have the most people because the most people are in the game. And of course, more people are getting in and in now because of the ridiculous free pass system. I mean, the fact that you don't have to really get a question correct until like level 10 or whatever, until question 10 or 11 is beyond ridiculous when you're talking about the amounts of money that are involved here. Like, I mean, that's just bizarre. Like, I would understand the pass perhaps to save you one time from a wrong one, but you literally could answer, hypothetically, let's take a 12 question game. You hypothetically could only have to answer one question right. You have a pass through level 10, so you miss questions 1 through 10, you miss 11, you use a life, and you get 12 right. That's silly. That's a one question quiz. One question. And it's also kind of why I like Jackpot, too, because they always say that you can't use lives past 17. And 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, you got to be perfect. You got to earn that cash. But these 12, these 15 formats, they just cheapen by all the extra lives because now you can use 3 instead of 1 in a given game. And the free pass system, it's broken. It is just broken. And I understand they want to have more people in the game. That's why we kind of revised the pass system. So while you could still have people doing that and they could benefit their multipliers and they could still sell them as much. Is to have it be maybe once a pass game or a twice a pass game where, there's only so many times you can use it. Like, your pass saved you, but you only can use your pass a few more times and not every single time, every single game. Because when they started out with free passes last time around this year, they didn't apply to sports. So sports wound up having actually decent payouts, and now you're lucky to get $1 from sports. I remember when I was one of 25 people to win HQ Sports for $40, and Lauren Gambino gave me a big shout out because I knew some really obscure stuff, like the only MVP in baseball not to make the All-Star game, Chipper Jones in '99, by the way.
Yep.
But it was crazy. That was the kind of thing you could expect because passes were not there. And it was still 12 questions. Granted, a lot of the bots thought that
Mm-hmm.
Ty Cobb was in the 2018 All-Star game and not Scott Rogowski. But the point stands, though, passes have diluted the payouts to be a cheap imitation of what they once were. And there's a way around to fix that you can still sell multipliers as much. There's no reason for them to be that overpowered to the player's benefit or to the company's benefit. Because you're still going to give out about the same amount of money, honestly. And if anything, you might see more people taking lower offers. So they possibly could save money because the passes have limited use rather than extended use.
Mm-hmm. And because the season is so truncated right now, season 7 is really truncated. It's only 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and
now,
Friday you had...
That's something I personally like, but I can see how people wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. And then Friday you had After Dark, which gave everybody a free 10 multiplier.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising, actually. I guess my guess is that because they didn't have a game that day, like at their normal time, and the fact that it was only a $100 base pot because they only do $100 for late night. So I kind of get that as a trade-off because it's kind of like back when they used to do too much really disapproval games that were played for only points. They tried to save money by doing that. Nope. And then I think they got an influx of cash from an investor soon after that, thankfully.
Yep.
But it kind of reminds me of a throwback to that. Of course, all the while you're laughing, you don't realize that that's really the case.
Mm-hmm. So, to summarize, for what both of us think are the fall of HQ, do we agree Colin Kroll's death played a small part in it, but the big part is changing up the format from the jackpot format to the current format, having free praise lasting through 10, and you can possibly win like a buck or two on just one question by having a free pass at 11 and just blindly guessing question 12.
Well, the Colin Kroll death was I think a turning point, but it's hard to know how much of that made an impact. Like it's reasonable to think it was the case, but I can't necessarily say that it would be. The free pass system, I don't really think turned people many off. If anything, I think it was an attempt to get more people to play because they would feel like they had a chance to win. Now that you've got really a lot of the casual players, I don't think there's really a reason for it to exist. The real thing was that there's such a format that there's not really a reason for people to play anymore for casual viewers because either they realize that they don't have a chance to win much, or the fact that hey they've already won and what's their incentive to keep playing,
Sure.
and the fact that wipes kept happening, money balances wiped, and players being booted legitimately, I think were a big flaw. They had good intentions. Let's not lie. Removing bots from the game, as Matt now calls out, which I kind of like. That is a nice change that he's brought of late. But false positive, false flags from a majority of people, freezing cash balances to innocent people, even though they were under review, is not a good look. Like, I mean, as a diehard to me, that's very frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating that would be to a casual player who almost never wins. Like, oh, you won that 339. Oh, sorry, it's frozen. You can't actually cash that out. Come on.
Me.
No other app will do that. They'll have minimums, but obviously you can cash it out right after.
Like, I have it, and right now my account balance is a grand whopping total of 6 cents. Like I mentioned earlier, I got it off of Friends trivia because I bailed out at Q9 because I know nothing about Friends.
Yeah, the first stuffers are never worth it.
It was for me because I gone like 12, 13 games, not even making it to Q8. Yeah, so for dummy like me, at least making it to the special game Q9, getting 6 cents, I'm like, okay, I know I'm not getting 11 and 12 on a specialized game, so wink, I'll take it.
I'm curious to see what you think because it's important to note that you have not played what I think is the very good format yet. So, and that happens on Monday. So,
Right. So for me, I'll still play. You know, maybe get a couple of bucks here and there. But for me, I think we've seen the start of the fad die, and this would be the second.
oh, it's already died. It's already died. Like, look how
Right.
many apps have come and gone. Like, there are more that have died than are active right now. Like,
Right.
I mean, they keep dying off like flies.
Like
Or
Joyride,
fading.
Ripcord.
Joyride is fine. Ripcord as Telly is. Who knows about them? They're turning into a bunch of talk shows that don't obviously pay anything. Like they had a show the other day about imposter syndrome, which, I'll be honest, I'm interested in watching that, but it's not why I downloaded Telly. Yeah, I play Telly to play Fast Facts and win some cash, to play in or out on a roulette, to play Word Up. I mean, it's just, I mean, the game is unchanged. Like, thankfully there are sport prediction games like Hoffer now, where you can play those, predict the sports, win the cash.
Mm-hmm.
Usually my name is prizes on most of these, so you can play those, and we get referral bonuses that way. Or some of these apps are very suspect, like the Q, which didn't pay its people because it thought people were cheaters too. Like that is a big
FN
downfall
Genius,
for a lot of
and
these.
FN Genius is the absolute dog worst.
F Genius is the million-second quiz of trivia apps. Let's just be honest. I mean, I remember I went out on a question on their second $25,000 game, which came first, and they basically one of my friends had the same issue. He went out on the same choice and said they get the same response, even though we had direct proof that they were wrong. And they basically added in words that we didn't add in. It's like, this is not our argument. Fix this.
And they said, okay, we'll fix it. It's gone. No, we didn't fix your problem. The whole app is gone. Too bad.
We'll fix it all. We're just going to do the next game in another hour. Admittedly, I'll be honest, it was kind of crazy cool with effing Genius have three $25,000 games in 3 hours. That was generally one of the better. Say what you will about the app being crummy, about some of their question writing and how they followed up with it and how long it took people to get paid, but they did get paid. I mean, winners got $600. Nobody won the third game, so they only gave out 50,000. Whoops! But I mean, the experience of doing that in that kind of span was nuts. It's not been done before. It's not been done since. I got to give them that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's essentially it. I mean,
yeah,
that's the fall of
there are
HQ.
so many stories. Yeah, there are more stories about why HQ fell. I'm not at liberty to speak about all of them. There will be a follow-up to this, I guarantee you, when all these apps die and there is nothing more to be said about them. Yeah, there is so much more to be said that I have personally experienced within these apps and so forth. Please do not ask about them. They will come eventually when the time arises. It is not my place to speak about what has happened. But oh boy, there are stories about people and things. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yep, and thus ends Game Show Garbage. So, well, back to Gumbo. What, would you expect a big goodbye
There'll
or
be a
something?
post-screen bonus credits screen.
No, because we're still going to be going on. We're now Game Show Gumbo, officially now. We're still cranking out content. We're still going to be riffing on things that deserve to be riffed. I mean, we're still around.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, certainly. This still needs to be ripped further, and again, there's a lot of reasons I'm not saying what I am yet, for everybody's sake. God knows. But man, oh man, I have a story the size of Quiz Show when we're done here. This is just the tip of the iceberg, what I hit upon and what I feel at liberty to say right now.
Yep. So just know that we will still be talking about HQ on the Gumbocast in future shows. It just depends on how further down it goes down the toilet.
Yeah, so use one lucky fan, all spelled out, OELUCKYFAN, and to get extra live super spins, all that good stuff when you download HQ works on most of the apps because it's different on a few of them. Again, just ask me on the GameCube Gumbo Discord or on the video, and I will send them to you because we both stand to benefit from as much.
Or Sigma Fan.
Yeah,
If you don't want to give it
that's
to
one way to
Jessica
go.
because she's won over $10,000, give it to a dummy like me. Sigma Fan. SIGMAFAN.
Yeah, there's some standard deviation between the both of us, you know.
Mhm.
So, but actually, I think it is important to have your take as well on this, honestly, because we have my case where someone who has played and won a ton and made it to honestly basically the precipice of all this, and who, in respect, has not really made those points. And it's just more representative of the average player who is obviously who they need to market to, and they're not going to market to the sharps. Let's be honest.
No, and just playing these games, I'm just like, okay. It's just, I mean, I'm having more fun playing Words than I am playing HQ. And it's because I also personally I think Anna Roisman is a much better host than Matt Richards.
I think it depends what for sometimes. Anna can be Anna's, it's a shame too. I think when they're in the After Dark or when they're on social media, I think they're both better in natural elements like those. I feel like the shows bog them down, and that's nobody's fault from theirs to Russ's to anybody's. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah. I know I said, and that's the end of the fall of HQ for what we have as of right now, about 5 minutes ago, but now this definitely is the end of the fall of HQ. And now we take you back to your regularly scheduled programming, already in progress. And that was the induction of the fall of HQ.
Thanks again, Jessica. Wow. I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.